Hi, everyone, and welcome to Off the Record, the podcast of breaking news, hard opinion, and a little bit of gibber. Got my co-pilot here again, Phil Buzz Rothfield. G'day, Buzz.
Hello, Webby. Great to be back, episode 2. And, mate, we're flying. What about the first up reaction from the punters?
I know. Well, look, we wanted to thank everyone for their very kind words about our first episode last week. I feel like we're the Beatles. We're like on Apple Podcasts, we're second. For sports podcasts, and on Spotify, we're third.
Mate, that is terrific, and I do want us to thank a few people, Sam, who puts all this together, and Mark Boris for allowing us to use his studios, and the backing we're getting from Michael Miller, Ben English at News Corp. Mate, it's all, essential, and I think, the punters obviously like what we're gibbering about.
Yeah, that's the most important thing. Thank you. No, seriously though, we've been overwhelmed with the positive response in the last week from you guys. So thank you so much. We just keep doing what we're doing, and hopefully you keep on listening, so you could keep a couple of old hacks.
I want to knock off Kenty. I've got to knock off Kenty.
I think you should, knock out Kenty, but if you just knock him off the top.
I want to beat his podcast anyway.
Okay, so on today's podcast, we've got some breaking news from Buzz on Origin eligibility, which has been thrown into chaos because of the Payne Haas saga. I've got some breaking news as well, so stay tuned. We'll talk about the NRL's head-high crackdown that isn't a crackdown. We'll talk about where Daly Cherry Evans is headed, and Tim Tszyu's career, whether that's on the line when he fights on Sunday. And in our war story segment, I'm going to talk about the story I broke about Michael Clarke being grabbed by the throat by Simon Katich in the SCG dressing room in 2009.
Can't wait, Webby. I'll be asking questions about your sources for that one. I don't know whether you'll be able to help. I would love to know where that story came from.
It's funny, a lot of people, I get asked that a lot from other journos. Where did you get that from? All these different...
And I trust you'll be telling our listeners today.
No. You know why? Because I was told off the record.
Right, of course.
All right, our first segment, Champs and Chumps. Buzz, who is your champ of the week?
Well, my champ of the week is the Canterbury Bulldogs. That might shock a lot of people because there are a lot of people in rugby league, because of my non-relationship with Gus, don't think that might interfere with my views on the Doggies. That they are top of the ladder, 4 straight wins. They demolished the Cronulla Sharks at Shark Park last Saturday night. I was there to see it. They are a seriously tough football side, and they are seriously a skillful football side. That they did it without Burton, Kiraz, who was a terrific outside back, and Billy Kickow. Get these guys back into that football side, and Webby, I'm here to say that the Bulldogs are a hope of winning the comp this year. Now, hold on. I base this around the fact that Melbourne fell over last week. Penrith have fallen over the last few weeks. I think it's the most wide-open premiership in 10 years. Gus has obviously done a terrific job with this football side, but that Cameron Ciraldo, he is a sensational rugby league coach. He's a really smart dude. They can win the comp.
Hang on. 3 years ago, you blokes in the media were saying Ciraldo's another next big thing that's going to flop.
In 2021, they won 3 games. They punted Trent Barrett, and then they finally got Ciraldo, and he struggled his first year. Yeah.
Well, it just shows you the importance of patience, doesn't it?
You
can't be pulling the trigger on clubs and players and coaches in particular just after 1 or 2 seasons. I agree. I think they're a top 4 team. I don't think they can make I don't think they can win the grand final. I wouldn't be surprised if they made it. It's very exciting though. It's a great story. What's happening at Belmore? Mine's not rugby league related. My champ, Josh Giddey.
Wow.
Sunk a half-court shot on the buzzer for the Chicago Bulls, the famous Chicago Bulls, to beat the LA Lakers. His last 12 seconds, we just performed miracles, Giddey. He's only 22, this kid.
Wollongong
boy. He's on target for a massive contract at the end of the year, as much as 50 million Australian. And if he gets that, he won't just be on your money. He'll be up there with Ben Simmons and Jordan Mailata in terms of the highest paid Australian athletes we've got. Here's a fun fact: his father Warwick played junior rugby with Ricky Stewart.
Did he really?
Yeah, I didn't find that out until a couple
Canberra?
of days. I'm assuming so.
Yeah,
I just heard that a couple of days ago.
Can
And they're
I
still in
just
contact
say-
with each other. So.
Can I just say I'm really pleased you've come up with a credible champ this week. I was so concerned about when you gave Reggie Rabbit your saint or champ or thumbs up.
Hang on. What about you? You had Bennett because he returned a text message. So with that in mind, I texted Wayne because we haven't really spoken since the book.
Did he reply?
Well, he didn't get back to me for a couple of days, and I thought, hang on,
him 48
you've
hours.
gone back. You've got back to Buzz, but you brushed me. He did get back to me.
He did?
Yeah.
Wow.
There you go.
Mate,
But see, I'm not so self-indulgent to make him my
wouldn't it be great to
champ.
get him in here?
Ooh.
What odds? 1,000 to 1?
50 to 1.
Yeah, right.
But if anyone can
Yeah.
get him in, it's Nick Fordham.
Yeah.
Who's your chump?
Isn't it great, though, to have him back in rugby league in
Nick?
Sydney?
Yes, it is actually. Wayne, I know. Oh, well, you know what, Buzz? Look at how they're going.
Yeah.
Like, seriously, they lose two big names in Latrell and Cameron Murray and do what they do. Anyway, we're digressing. Who's your chump?
My champ
Champ?
this week is the Shane Warne story in the Daily Mail.
Oh,
3 years after his death, the Daily Mail published a story that there was some sort of sex drug in his room. Care factor 0. Let the great man rest in peace. Think of his family, his kid. I just didn't think it was necessary, Webby, to be dragging it up. Look, we all have known. And the other thing I want to say, he wasn't cheating on anyone. He wasn't in a relationship, whatever was going on there. But
his cause of death is relevant, Buzz. And it's, but you know what?
We don't know it was the cause of death. The coronary
that was
finding
from
was heart.
So let's get this clear. But like the way that they wrote it, like it's a sex drug. It's like Viagra. It's Camagra.
Yeah, well,
I'm not really across these things.
No, at my age, I'm not particularly concerned about it either. But, mate, I just want this guy. He was fair at World so beautifully with the MCG, with the stand. And I just don't like it.
You don't like it?
No, I don't.
No, grubby journalism.
Oh, well, what's yours?
Mine's Football Australia, for the way they went weak at the knees over Sam Kerr. My God, the way that they've handled this whole story involving the Matilda's captain and didn't sanction her at all, or took the captaincy off her, which I thought would have been enough. The sycophantic football media, with the exception of Robbie Slater, have said it's a good idea. I think it sends a terrible message. I know she didn't she wasn't convicted. I know she was found not guilty of those charges, but that video footage of her in that police station was terrible for not just the Matildas brand, but also the football brand in this country. And I'm sorry, if it was an NRL or NRLW player, they would have been given 2 to 3 weeks. And she got nothing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And look, I honestly thought you and me, being completely different dudes, would be arguing each week over these sort of things, but I've got to 100% agree with you. Yeah, you are right. And the Matildas had such a beautiful love affair with the Australian sporting public, and rightly so. And those girls who represented us here at the World Cup and the Mary Fowlers, all those. But it's really stained, not just Sam, but Football Australia.
I know,
what
they just
is
did nothing.
Wrong with them?
The way
read the friggin' room.
Read the room, for God's sake. Read social media. No, but the way that they didn't act on it straight away, and then this press release that they banged out a couple of days ago and said that it was, there's some information that's come to light, but we're not going to tell you what it is. That makes us think that, Sam deserves a free pass. I just think that's weak. And that's the problem that holds football back in this country. It's so insular, and if you dare say anything critical about any of their athletes or their coaches, then suddenly you're, the bad guy or the rugby league reporter bashing up, another sport. It's
very
bullshit.
Briefly, soccer went downhill in this country when Frank Lowy left. I've sat opposite Frank Lowy, the top of the his office and the tower down there on William Street.
Mm.
And I interviewed him, and that Clive Palmer, the gibber, was in charge of the guy, and he kicked Palmer out of the comp.
Yeah, no.
That was leadership, Webby, because Palmer was behaving like a goose. And I can guarantee you, if the Lowy family was still running Australian soccer, Sam Kerr would have got time and would have been stripped of the captaincy.
Absolutely.
They have lost all leadership.
And I reckon if David Gallup was the CEO, he wouldn't have stood for it.
100%.
Well, that'll get everyone upset.
Yes.
Speaking of getting people, I love how you said we're different dudes.
Well, we are.
We are, thank God. we certainly are different.
Everyone keeps saying to me,
What?
They saw last week's podcast and said we had no idea that you two actually get on. You can even sit in a room together.
I think people think of how we were years ago. And now we're making podcast music together.
I am not going to do it this week, but I am going to tell the story about the night at the Daly when I was very, very tempted to whack you. And if you, I will tell that story.
You're going to make it up like most of your yarns anyway, aren't you? Speaking of which, our next segment, you heard it here first, unless it didn't happen.
Wow.
Buzz.
Breaking story, Webby.
What do you got for us? What do you got for the fans of Off the Record out there?
There is a major split in the ranks of the RLPA and 520 players across the competition.
Civil War.
Civil War in the old tabloid days, that would be the back page headline. But you know what it's over? This mad origin eligibility rules. And there was a poll done last year. And players were asked, 520 players were asked, should Tier 1 players from New Zealand and England be allowed to play Origin if they played their first footy in Australia under 13? You know, the poll, and this is where the split is, 51% said yes, 49% said definitely no.
My God.
So it's a really interesting one. I think the qualification rules are just farcical. We had a story break this week, and I know you were onto it first before Michael Champs
beat me to the punch.
Yeah.
I was saving it for this segment, and I got beaten to the punch.
So we have this
I hate
outrageous situation where Jerome Luai, Stephen Crichton, Hamoli Olakawatu, now Payne Haas, can play Origin and play for Samoa. Victor Radley, Clovelly Crocodile since he was a 6-year-old, loves the New South Wales Blues, but good on him, chose to play for England, can't play. Callan Ponga wants to play for New Zealand, but they won't let him because it's a Tier 1 nation. It's rubbish.
It's crazy.
And Webby, what I got out of this before I chuck to you, Clint Newton has told me that it is something they will bring up as part of discussions in the next CBA deal to find a solution that allows our premium product in rugby league to have the very best players in the game playing in it.
Oh, look, that's good. I hope he does the same, has the same enthusiasm for fixing up the contracting system as well. I think there are, I know we've lavished praise on PVL and Abdul on this program last week, and fair enough too, but there are 3 fundamental areas that need to be fixed. Getting rid of the dirtbag player managers in the game. 2, the contracting system, and 3, eligibility rules. And every league boss before them have always put these 3 things into the too hard basket. These are the 3 things that need to be fixed. And these are the 3 main issues that piss off fans. And it needs to be looked at, and it needs to a hard and fast rule on what they are, because the 3 systems are not working at the moment.
Webby, the rules were done in 1980.
I get
there
it.
were 5 Pacifica players in the competition then. It was never an issue. The game's changed.
Yeah.
Origin was always the best 34 players will run onto Lang Park or will run onto the Sydney Cricket Ground or MCG, wherever. The best 34 in the comp. Now, I don't want all Englishmen play. Sam Burgess would never qualify because he's a POM. Victor Radley's an Aussie who's chosen to play for England. these fellas from Samoa, I want them playing Origin because they all were born or grew up here. I want Ponga playing. They've got to fix this, Webby.
I agree.
And I think Peter V'landys and Andrew Abdals, we said last week, but they're slow with this one. They've got to actually do. Wayne Pearce was supposed to look at it 2 years ago. Nothing happened.
You're very fired up. I get you.
I'm frustrated over the lack of action.
I can tell
I want to protect our showpiece event.
You done?
Yeah, I'm done.
Get another Nicorette.
I will actually.
I agree. I agree. The problem for me, if Payne Haas, I don't think you should be able to chop and change willy-nilly. That's where I think it really undermines international football. I know they'll talk about it being good for international football, but you just can't change it at the drop of the hat. I reckon I like the fact that blokes like Luai, To'o, whoever will represent Samoa, but I think but they've made that choice and played for them first.
Yes.
And I just think that should be it. I don't think you should suddenly, all of a sudden, because Cameron Munster goes down and Luai shoots the lights out in Origin, that he should go from Samoa to Australia. I don't like that.
No.
I think it should be one. But I agree. The problem is that, all right, use Luai as an example. If he doesn't get picked in the Australian team and he gets picked for he should be allowed to play for Samoa.
Because if you don't, the game's not a selection child for Australia anymore.
100%. But I agree. Like, as you said, there was 5 Pacifica players in 1980 in the comp. It's now 50 to 60%. And just as the rules have changed elsewhere in the game to fit the trends in the game, that has to change too.
And
I'm with you.
It'll make international football stronger if Ponga can play for New Zealand.
100%. But that's the thing. So this is the thing, Buzz. So when I was sniffing around this in the last couple of days, I went to V'landys and Abdo, and their response was the same. It's not on the agenda. Why is it not on the agenda? Why is it not considered something that's important?
You're a very, very powerful man in this game, Andrew. You carry enormous influence. This will go onto the agenda. I'm sure it will.
We're setting agenda.
Well, we know Clint Newton's going to put it on the agenda.
Oh, that's good.
Because
in the next CBA agreement, it should be done now.
Yeah, I know.
Get into it now, not in the next CBA negotiations.
Do you get on with Clint?
No, we've had ups and downs.
Well, you just seem a little bit sour.
I just don't like. I'm fine with Clint. I just don't like the contracting system. He and I are at different ends of the spectrum. Anyway, let's get on to the news of the week. Well, it's a crackdown that's not a crackdown, apparently. The NRL is going to sin bin players for head-high shots to rival players after some slipped through the net last week. Another crackdown on head-highs.
It's not a crackdown, Webby.
Well, what is it?
It's not a crackdown.
Well, they're enforcing the rules.
No. Yeah, exactly. That's all it is. Enforcing the rules that have been there since 1908. You can't hit a bloke in the head.
100%, but Buzz, that's exactly what they did before Magic Round a few years ago, and look what happened. It was insanity.
Yeah, but the problem with Magic Round is they said this, about 3 hours before the event?
I'm glad now it's 3 days.
That was what they did, and I liked the fact that they admitted their referees, who are normally protected species, got it wrong last week. And they've told them to be more vigilant this time, particularly that Reid Marnie shot.
When on the ground.
Attacking the man in the head on the ground. If you did that down the road, on the street, they'd arrest you and charge you.
Buzz, I live in King's Cross. I see that every day.
Oh, yeah. No.
Just from people trying to get a coffee.
Yeah, no, I applaud the NRL. They had to do something about it. There were some shocking incidents that went unchecked last week. And it can't go on, Webby.
Okay, as long as they don't overreact, I'll be happy with it.
Well, it's up to the players to ensure the NRL doesn't overreact, and they need a slight adjustment to their tackling techniques.
Yeah, but they said this a few years ago.
Mate, I blew up about Magic Round more than anyone, and that ridiculously over the top. And it shouldn't have happened the way it did.
I don't want the bunker to get involved in everything like they do. That's the problem. That's what I see.
Oh, I just totally disagree with you there. There was an even worse incident. You saw that touch judge up at Suncorp Stadium the other night?
Doing what? Did a touch judge do something? That is probably the biggest news of the day.
Selwyn Cobbo didn't plant his foot on the line, but over the friggin' line.
Yeah.
and they played on. A game-changing decision. And I'm of the opinion, and I've said this all week, and I'm not going to bore people by keep going on, the bunker should have said, hey, you got that wrong. They should have.
I disagree, Buzz. I think they should just put things. It's not NFL where you can't start everything. Just put it in the hands of the on-field match officials.
If your team, St George, were in a grand final,
they did do it in a grand final against the Roosters, and they won the game.
No, but if it decides a premiership, you don't want the blanket to say quickly, "Hey, boys, you got it wrong." Bring it back.
No. I just think the technology has overrun the game. I think it's far too much.
Well, you are wrong. We have millions and millions of dollars worth of high-definition 4K.
Yeah, I know how the bunker works, Buzz. We're going to have our first bluey.
Well, yeah.
You know what? I'm going to give you...
There's one of us are talking sense here, Webby. You can't not allow them to step in. I don't want them to step when there's a clanger, a howler, a game changer.
Well, that wasn't a game changer.
That's why they're there, mate.
What? I know,
it was a game changer. The score was 10-8.
If you go every... Okay, fair enough. Like, I get it. It was a crucial decision. But mistakes are going to happen. We're not going to get every decision right. And I think the touch, you got that wrong. But that's
we were
human
in a
error.
position. We saw in our lounge room that was wrong.
So what were they supposed to do? So they play on. Walsh
swing it across the back.
So what? And then,
call down the referee.
They get three tackles down into the set, and they go, "Oh, hang on, we've actually seen that it should be back here."
The bunker would have done it in two passes.
The game doesn't stop. The game isn't. It's not American football. We don't have stoppages like that.
I don't watch NFL. If I watch NFL,
well, you're trying to turn rugby league into NFL.
No, I'm not. I just don't. I think we've got it there. Use it.
Righto.
But sparingly.
Righto, I've had enough of you. Daly Cherry Evans. What a saga this has turned out to be. DCE versus Mestrov, Webby v Moses, 9 v Fox, Widler v Rothfield.
Widler? What do you mean Widler v Rothfield?
And then on the undercard, it's Champs v Reed.
That is very...
And so Daly has...
the smear campaign.
I love a smear campaign. That was extraordinary media, wasn't it?
Terrible.
And I tell you what, he just didn't say it. He said it to Triple M, SEN at the press conference. There's a blimp going past saying smear campaign. Like, he told everybody. For someone who wanted to get rid of speculation about his future, it's speculation times 1,000.
Threw a can of petrol on it.
I know.
He did.
I know. How did you...
oh, mate, I'm outraged by what happened the other day. I'm absolutely... Because I know everything I've reported. It's nothing smear. It's factually correct, and it's been a massive, massive story, and I'm surprised DCE carried on the way he did. My opinion won't change on him. I think he's been well looked after over 15 years. I think him and his manager should have worked hard to do a deal with Manly before they just went on Channel 9 and announced he was going. I don't, it's just not the right way to do business at a 15-year employee.
Maybe they treated him poorly.
Look, if you went to News Corp, your employer, and said, "Oh, look, the editor's smearing me, the CEO's you don't say it, Webby, not publicly."
I think I think both camps are playing a PR war, and I think DC is winning it. I do. Buzz, he didn't get booed at all there at Brookie on Sunday.
Boos, but very minor. But look, I
just, again, we disagree. I think Manly stuffed it up. They should have sorted this a long time ago, and I think a lot of it's to do with Tony Mestrov wanting to have complete control and power of that club. I know he's the CEO, but sometimes you got to realise you're going to win a comp with or without Cherry Evans. You win it with him, so you do what you do to keep him.
I've said all along that there's two sides at fault here, and both of them have had very, very poor table manners in the negotiations, and it's finished up with a legend leaving the club.
I reckon the thing that's annoyed him the most was the stuff about the release, because it was explained to me from the Cherry Evans camp. The release was asked for some time ago about returning to Queensland for family matters. And now that's been used against him, and I think that's probably what's annoyed him the most.
Yeah, but he's been leaking too, mate. He's been leaking too.
There's been a lot of leaking. Okay, more importantly...
And don't bring my relationship with Danny Widler into it, please. No, don't.
Why?
Because I don't want to feud
Well, you're the
with
big
him.
dogs. You're the big dogs.
No,
I'm not saying there's like animosity, but it's like it's dueling columns.
well, it is. And often you have a collision on a Sunday morning with his column, and there's been combat over the years. But I report things as I see it, and I don't even think about Danny as I'm sitting there at the keyboard doing my best to inform the punters.
I've got new bifocal glasses. I can see Danny living rent-free in your head. That's how good they are. Now, listen, where's he going? It's shaping up as the Dogfather versus the Godfather.
Yes.
Gus v. Politis, Uncle Nick.
Yeah,
what do you reckon?
Song? He know how to play the game they play it. I reckon DCE will be singing that song at the Chooks. I really
hope he
do.
sings it better than that.
Boy.
What's that song?
What's wrong? They know how to play the game. They play it hard but fair. That's the only words I know.
That's a song from the 1960s. 1960s.
I do prefer 60s.
What's he going? Where's he going?
I think he's going the Chookies.
It seems that way, doesn't it?
He does.
But, I mean, there seems to be, I know Gus has come out on Twitter and said, or X, and said, I'm not, we're not interested. I don't believe that. Do you reckon?
Well, he said the same about Leo Thompson.
He said a lot of things
3 weeks later.
He denied a lot of things, old Philip Ronald Gould, and they came to fruition.
Yeah,
the truth is out there.
Look, there's a smoky in Redcliffe. I also got told he might be interested in Catalans, his wife, and a couple of years in France, but...
I can say this one. I spoke to someone at the Gold Coast yesterday at the top end of the tree. They have not even a discussion about him.
Right.
So that's not going to happen.
Des was at his wedding. Siebes wasn't.
Oh, well, God, we must be going there then.
Yeah.
Go to a wedding, play halfback with them next year. Okay, let's get into our final news item. Tim Tszyu is fighting Joey Spencer, an American who's a loudmouth, in Newcastle on, is it Sunday or Saturday?
Sunday.
On Sunday, sorry.
2:00 before the footy.
What do you reckon? There's some debate about whether Joey Spencer will fight because he's blown up about the judges.
Yeah, I think he's going to fight. I think it's a bit of pre-publicity hype that boxing generates every now and then.
I love boxing. You what? You could say anything about someone. You could say that your opponent's a serial killer. That's all right, as long as it gets tickets and pay-per-views.
On the way in this morning, I stopped at Ramsgate and I had a coffee with the most nervous man in Australian sport, that being Matt Rose.
Oh, how is Matt?
The boss of No Limit, who knows it is D-Day for Tim Tszyu. He's lost his last 2 fights, the only 2 he has ever lost, clearly beaten in both. And unless he can beat Joey Spencer, I think it might be all over Red Rover.
Really?
I do.
What, do you think he'll retire?
I think he will, mate. I just don't think there's any way back from 3 straight losses.
No.
Not at his age, at 30. He's not an up-and-coming boxer. He had his first fight in 2016. It was an event at the Sydney Cricket Ground, and he became world-class. But what I like about Tim, though, Matt Rose and the team said, you got to come back. You've had 2 losses against, we'll just put you up against a stiff, basically. We'll just get your confidence back. We'll get a pay audience. He said, no. If I'm going to, stay in this business, I'm going to fight the best. And he's picked one of the best available. Do you know now Tim Tszyu is not in the IBF top 10?
Really? No, well, actually, that doesn't...
He's not in the top 10.
That doesn't surprise
If he
me.
wins this fight, he'll shoot into all of them.
I find it really, the loss to Fundora, finding him an awkward fight like that at the last minute was always going to be, a tricky task for him. I'm sad with how the Tim Tszyu story's gone. He was going to go to America and take on Vegas and become our best boxer in a generation. He was so determined to step out of Kostya's shadow, and then when things started to turn, he just tried to trade in on the Tszyu name, I reckon, and I think that wasn't particularly. I think there was mixed messages about who he was and what he wanted to be. Say my name, which was an Ali thing. It was he's become. Boxing is so brutal and it's such a lonely sport. If you lose a couple, you're out the door. You've seen it with Kambosos.
Yeah, the ramifications of a loss is not just him, but it's no limit boxing, and they're the number one. Yeah, they do things world class. I don't care what you say. They're big events.
They very much almost saved Australian boxing in many ways.
Yes, but if they lose Tim Tszyu from their stable, they're in strife. They're in strife.
So there is a limit.
Yes, there is
to no limit.
And as I said, Matty Rose is so nervous.
Yeah, right.
But Tim Tszyu, despite I think he'll win because he is a great fighter. He's better than his tactics were wrong in the last fight, and
he's tough.
He's tough bugger, mate.
He is
shy boy, mate.
So he's got a glass jewel then.
Beg your pardon.
You know what? I'm just giving you a bit of grace. I'm going to give you till about round 7 or 8.
Oh, yeah.
And then if you keep sledging me, I'm going to climb across there.
How was you?
I'm going to climb across there and just go bang, bang and do what I should have done 20-odd years ago.
The Daly M story will be told in upcoming episodes, listeners. And, the day James Hooper saved Webby.
The day I tried to fight half of News Corp at the Daly M after party.
All right.
Righto.
Move on.
Let's move on to our next segment, War Stories.
I love war stories. I love them, and it's your turn.
Okay.
It's your turn.
So let's go back to February 2009 when I was about 20 kilos lighter and had more hair. And I'd joined the Telegraph 2 weeks earlier,
right.
And you were my sports editor.
Yes.
And and like every young journo who starts at a new masthead, because it was quite a big move, wasn't it, from the Herald to the Telegraph?
Can I tell people that it took me 2 schooners to hire you?
Well, you said this last week, and that's a lie.
I can't remember what I said last
I don't think any of us can remember what happened that night.
Come on.
And the story that fell into my lap from a very good contact was that Michael Clarke, Australian captain, was he captain then?
Yeah, don't know if he was. I think punter might have been, mate.
He was the vice captain. Sorry, it's good to know. I'm glad I know my own story. He was the vice captain, and
they'd won a test, right?
They'd won a test, and they kept Clarke wanted the song, the Under the Southern Cross, sung early, so he could depart the dressing rooms at the SCG. They'd lost the series to South Africa, but they had won that test by 103 runs at the Sydney Cricket Ground. That's the tradition of singing Under the Southern Cross. And Simon Katich was the custodian of singing the song, and Clarke kept saying, I want to move it along. I got told it was because he wanted to see Lara Bingle. Clarke actually denied that in his autobiography.
Didn't he want to go out in Anthony Bell's boat
many years later?
Too,
look, I just think it was because of, but his teammates certainly thought it was to see Lara Bingle. Anyway, Simon Katich grabbed him by the throat and held him up against the wall. And it was passed off as just a minor skirmish that happens in every sporting team, but it just showed the simmering tension in that side towards Michael Clarke. What surprised me with that story, Buzz, was so Peter Young was the head of corporate affairs there. Remember Peter Young? Used to wear the glasses and the beard and the bow tie. He was quite a
good fella.
He was an eccentric character, good operator.
Yeah.
And I called him and he said, I'll get back to you quite quickly. And he came back with prepared statements from both of them, Katich and Clarke.
Really?
So they'd been waiting for the story to go, and I'd got in first.
What surprised me, Webby, just interrupting, the Australian cricket dressing room is probably the most sacred place in Australian sport. What happens inside that dressing room for 100 and more years stays inside that dressing room. All the antics, all the, I can't believe it got out.
No.
And how did you get the story?
Well, I heard it from someone I'm not giving up the.
Was it a player? Can you say that much?
Let's just say it was a former player who was well connected.
So
with
it wasn't an
Australian team.
eyewitness.
Well, then I subsequently firmed it up with eyewitnesses and people around Clarke and Katich.
It was a massive story. It was front and back page.
Well, here's the thing. So at the time, News Corp, it ran on the front page of every single newspaper in the News Corp family, except the Daily Telegraph where I was working, because the editor at the time, Gary Linnell, was very excited about the fact that it was going to be 47 degrees in Sydney the next day. It was 26. It turned out to be 26. I got bumped off the front page by the weather.
For a weather story.
I got fell for a weather story.
He was a good editor.
But I remember
Gary.
I remember he was a great editor, Gary Linnell. I called Ian Healy for a reaction piece the next morning, and that was his first thing that buzzed. He goes, "Who told you?" I said, "I can't say."
Yeah, right.
And he said, "I got nothing to say." He was dark on me.
You've raised a really big story, because from there it became very, very apparent that Michael Clarke was quite distant from the rest of that cricket side, particularly in retirement. His 40th birthday, Webby.
Yeah,
Is
I don't
that
think.
right?
Yeah. I've heard this from people before that there are no cricketers at it, which is fine, past or present players, which is fine, but it just shows you that Clarkie's a different cat, you know.
But even you go to and you come to the test too in Sydney, and you see all those great old champions either in the Fox box or the Channel 7 box
or the
ABC or the Trust
Suite, where you usually are
I
eating
spotted you with caviar with your mate Stephen Gibbs.
What?
Stephen Gibbs, eh?
Like feeding
See your best +1 you can do?
He is. He is, actually.
I bring
he
Russ Jackson. He'll drink for Australia, Russ Jackson, my chief of staff.
I've got to say this. Once you drink cold beer out of a frosted glass, I can't go back. I'm not going back to plastic cups.
Yeah, but look, back to Clarke. I never see him there at the Sydney Test. He doesn't seem to be part of reunions. And look, I've had a very colourful history myself with Clarke. When he was on the Big Sports Breakfast, I appeared every Monday, and every second Monday we'd have a major blue that'd finish up the Daily Mail.
Well, you're very combative.
Oh, well, I can find a blue better than most, but I actually like him a lot.
Yeah, so do I. Look, don't worry. Clarke and I had our very ups and downs. We were all right after that story. The bigger blue we had was 2015, when I had actually been at the cricket, and a former, very, very well-known former captain came up and said, "When are one of you blokes going to write about how the Australian cricket team are off Michael Clarke?" He was out with that hamstring injury. So this was 2015. I remember writing it, and that caused absolute World War III. But you know what? And I was told it was wrong, and it was a beat-up. And then all these subsequent autobiographies from all these players, Mitchell Johnson, Clarke himself, they all confirmed it in their own books. So, so like this story and like that story, then it gets denied. You're a beat up merchant. This is all bullshit. Your sources have told you lies. And then you know what?
It was a sensational story.
But then it ends up being confirmed. It's just a reminder to me that if you're strong enough in your sources to don't flinch and still write it. But let me just say this: I get on great with Clarke now. And I have a great relationship with him, and we talk and we banter.
There's more
all the time.
breakdowns in his life. The Carl Stefanovic fallout and the video. You know, the Anthony Bell, his long-time accountant who set him up for life. He's on the water down there at Rose Bay. He's got property. He's a squillionaire, Clarke. But they no longer talk. I think it's sad.
It is sad.
I do. I really think it's sad because I find him a good bloke too.
Carl Stefanovic v. Michael Clarke in Noosa.
Yeah.
It's like a Kath and Kin episode. Anyway, it was a great story.
Didn't Carl do his hammy?
He did. I remember, what did Clarke call him? Carlos the We probably can't. I know we can swear on this podcast, but we probably draw a line there.
All right. No,
let's
good
just
war story. I've got a beauty
you
for next week. I can't wait to tell.
Hey, listen. Just very briefly, it's 30 years since Super League on April 1.
Yes.
And I spoke to John Quayle, the general manager of the Australian Rugby League, early this week. I said, 30 years, Quayle. And he didn't even flinch. He goes,
wow.
He said, mate, I didn't even know that was the anniversary.
Yeah.
He said, for us, the battle started, a couple of years earlier. What's your Super League war story? I was just a young journo in the Hunter Valley back then, so I
was a young sports editor at the Sunday Telegraph at the time and a rugby league writer then, and it was the most difficult period of my career because I was working for a company and I didn't agree with what they were doing. And my mates were on the ARL side, Arco and Quayle and a lot of the officials there. It was a really, really difficult story to cover, Webby. And I'll probably go into more detail. I don't want to, this is a
longer story for down the track.
Yeah, it is. But it got to a stage where I did quit over it. James Packer rang me and offered me a job at Rugby League Week as editor, a car, a parking spot, good money. But you know what he said to me? He said, I need a decision in 24 hours. I said, why? He said, because I want you on Alan Jones's show tomorrow morning, bagging News Corp about how they're dictators, and I want you on the footy show tomorrow night, bagging News Corp because I said, James, that's why I want to leave, because people are
telling you what to do.
Thankfully, I stayed.
Independent always.
Absolutely. Don't you ever
What was it? How much? What was the increase in money?
Absolutely no increase.
Oh, you're going to go? He wanted you to go for the same money?
Oh no! I sorry. When I decided to stay, it would have been some more money. Yeah.
Well, how much?
I'm not. No,
come on.
No. That's you don't reveal this.
How much of a percentage?
We'll go into the Super League coverage at News Corp. Rupert Murdoch once poked his head into conference.
What did he say?
And he said, "Where's the sports editor?" I put my hand up. I had me, Mr. Murdoch. He said, "Just look after Super League." No pressure.
My God.
No, it was very, very light-hearted. It was very light-hearted.
Good on you, Uncle Rupert.
Yeah. So
that would have been great days.
But we got 1,000. Mate, that's a beauty. The Katich Clarke story. Did you win an award for that?
No, I didn't actually. You? That's why. And ever since then, I've rarely gone in awards because I thought if that can't even get a nomination.
Have you won a Walkley?
No.
Have you won? Oh, no.
They're a farce anyway.
Are they?
Yeah. It's a lefty.
I don't write for awards. I don't enter awards.
No, we don't do this job for the awards. You do it for the cash. All right, let's get to Fearless Forecast. Buzz, what's your Fearless Forecast for this week?
I've turned to the big game. Eastern Suburbs Roosters versus the South Sydney Rabbitohs. My favourite game of the year. I don't care where they are on the ladder. I don't care what sort of struggles they are going through. It'll be a cracker. You know why? Because Latrell Mitchell is back and he'll click more turnstiles and he will bring more eyeballs to Fox and Channel 9. It is a super, super game. I think South, with him back, will comfortably beat the Roosters 13+, and I would throw Latrell in as an anytime try scorer.
I like it.
I will say, though, the most important thing is gamble responsibly, Andrew.
Thank you for that tip, Uncle Buzz. Mine's the Panthers. I can't believe people are, the dynasty's over. They've been up for a while, the old pennies, haven't they?
Yeah, they have.
They're entitled to look a little
bit tight. Do you reckon they got a Vegas hangover?
I do. I know I do.
Yeah.
But still. But, they probably do. I think the problem was they looked so good against Cronulla in Vegas. I thought that was a quality game. You know what I really noticed at that stadium at Allegiant, where we were sitting, where we were, the suite we were in, you're up high. It was almost like Brookvale. You're right on top of it. You could really get a appreciation for the speed of the game.
I love how
game was very quick.
I love how you spend the day in the suite.
I
was in the press box. I was a working, accredited journalist.
I'll give you a little tip. You get more stories in the suite than you do in the press box.
I scooped you on the biggest story there, where the Warriors assistant coach came out of his room and at half time and grabbed the journo
Johnny
by
Davidson,
the throat.
wasn't it? Yeah.
I scooped you.
It wasn't that. I couldn't care less about an assistant coach at a journo.
It got a lot of clicks.
Yeah, well, that's all that matters. So I like the Panthers will be back with a vengeance, particularly with Nathan Cleary back in the side. I know there's no To'o or Sorensen.
Or Edwards.
Or Edwards, of course. But still, I think Penrith will do a job. 13 plus. Alamotti, Talangi, Liam Martin. Always a bit of value for a back rower to score. Anytime try scorers, that's $14. Gamble responsibly.
Is this the one you do with your nephew?
No. I do one with my nephew every week. That's good. It's good.
What do you call it?
The J Monday multi.
Yeah.
That's my nephew, who's a Tyler on the North Coast.
Oh, is he?
Isn't that good? Isn't that great to bond with your 21-year-old nephew?
You knock around a lot of tradies.
I come from a family of tradies.
Yeah, wow.
I was smart. I got out, gibbering about sport for a living.
That was a funny story.
Which we've just done for the last 45 minutes or so on Off the Record. Very good. Thanks so much, Buzzy.
Can you find us a sponsor?
Hang on. What's that at the door? I think they're knocking now, wanting to get on board. Hey, listen, thanks everyone for tuning in again. Remember, you can follow us on OTR Buzz and Webby on Instagram, or you can subscribe to us on YouTube, which is the Off the Record podcast. Thanks, Buzz.
Loved it, Webby. A lot of fun, and see you back here next week.
See you next week, buddy. See you guys.